y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Deandra Levon. If you are new here, thank you for stopping by. I hope you stick around, and if you are not new here, then welcome back to the Clique. Alright y'all, so I'm back with the next part of my Counselor React series on The Ultimatum. So this one is going to be on episodes 4, 5, and 6. So let's jump right into it. So we're on episode 4. It's week 1 of the trial marriages. They're kind of just showing each couple. It's not really a whole lot going on. But I will say that Ryan and Trey at this point seem to be hitting it off really well. They're talking about how they have so much in common and how they've really enjoyed this first week together. She says that she still wants to get married, but she's just more focused on what's going to make her happy. So now we're going to switch over to James and Raya. So James decides to plan like a cute romantic date for her by the pool. He had like rose petals and champagne. It was really cute. So he feels like he lacked romance in his previous relationships, and he also calls Raya a 10 out of 10 physically. So he's definitely physically attracted to her. So the date goes really well, and she tells him that she really appreciates the romantic gesture. So Kat and Antonio are on like a cute picnic date that Antonio planned, and he talks about how, you know, he struggles to show his romantic side, and sometimes his partners feel like he isn't romantic, but in reality he just doesn't really have the extra money to spend on having fun and going on dates. We also learned during this conversation that Antonio struggled with a drug addiction for several years, and he just says that he was in a really dark place during that time. He asks if Kat feels like she knows who she is, and she's like, you know, I'm still trying to figure that out. I kind of could pick up on that. Like, Kat definitely seems like a very kind person, but it definitely feels like in her relationship with Alex, he probably dominates everything. Like, I think he makes most of the decisions, and a lot of that does come from you not really knowing who you are and not really knowing what it is that you want and what you want to stand on, so to speak. So Roxanne and Alex are on a date, and Roxanne is kind of talking about marriage, and she's like, you know, all the women that I know, they don't even want to be married because they're very ambitious, they're very independent. And Alex is like, I mean, I feel like you can be strong and ambitious in a marriage. And I completely agree with that. Like, I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't need to be married because I got everything going on over here while I'm single. Like, I don't need a man, I don't need a woman. And where that is good, like, you should have your own. As far as like finances goes, you should be able to take care of yourself on your own, just in case, because you never know what would happen. But at the same time, if both of y'all are ambitious and both of y'all are working towards something together, if you put your resources together, you of course can get farther than you would on your own. So I don't feel like being independent has to be the antithesis of being with somebody. Like, the two things can go together. Like, I'm a very ambitious person on my own, and so is my fiance. So together it's like we can accomplish everything. And I feel like that is what marriage is all about. So Roxanne says that Alex has a lot of the qualities that she would want in a husband, and she loves that he's so pro-marriage. It's kind of like helping her see the benefits of marriage. And it's kind of weird because, like, in Alex and Kat's relationship, Kat's the one that gave Alex the ultimatum. But yet, in the dynamic with Alex and Roxanne, he's trying to act like he's all for marriage and, oh, you should go get married now. And it's like, you didn't even want to get married to Kat. So what's really going on there? So Ryan and Trey are talking in the bed, and they're kind of talking about how they're both really nice and they're always putting others' feelings above their own. And although that's a nice thing to do at times, it can lead to you getting walked all over by your partners, and that's something that both of them have experienced. So although I think they do have a lot of things in common and they are very similar, that could be an issue if both of them are always trying to like, no, you get what you want. I don't need what I want. No, I want you to have what you want. Like, it's like you're never going to make a decision because both of y'all are trying to put the other one first. So that could kind of be a problem. That's like the only red flag that I'm kind of seeing with them. So now it's time for Roxanne to meet Alex's parents. And, you know, she's just saying how I never believed in marriage. And she's like, even though my parents have been married for over 30 years, I still just don't believe in it. And Alex's mom is like, well, did they actually have a good marriage? Because if they've been married for 30 years and you witnessed that, you would think that you would believe in it. And she's like, no, they had a great marriage. They have a great marriage. I just don't believe in marriage. Red flag. So they're talking and his parents ask if, you know, she's the one that signed up for this show. And she's just like, absolutely not. Antonio drags me onto this show. She says that she picked Alex because he challenges her, and he says you need someone who holds you accountable because you're the type of woman that will walk all over someone. And his mom is like, yeah, a gentle soul could not handle Roxanne. And I felt like that was kind of shady. Like, Alex's mom, I peeped that you were being a little shady there. Roxanne talks about how Antonio, you know, doesn't have ambition. He doesn't have a goal for his life. And she's like, I feel like he and Kat are actually very, very similar. His mom is like, well, maybe Alex wouldn't be satisfied for the rest of his life with Kat because maybe she just doesn't challenge him enough. And they talk about how they're just both working all the time and they haven't spent much time together, which that could definitely be a problem in real life. Kind of similar to what I was saying about Ryan and Trey. I feel like Roxanne and Alex, with their work ethic and their ambition and all that, even though it's great that they both have that in common, it can be an issue if both of y'all are workaholics, because who's gonna be the one to be like, okay, put your work down, let's go out. Like, put your work down, let's spend time together. If both of y'all are always trying to work all the time, that's not gonna work. That's not sustainable in a real life marriage. So Raya and James are in the kitchen, and James is like doing the dishes, and you know, she's trying to tell him like, I really enjoyed the night, and he's just like, well, I apologize for the food. I guess like he cooked and it must not have been the best, or he didn't feel like it was the best. But she's like, no, like I appreciated it. Like, you made it with love. That's all that matters to me. And he's just like, well, when I'm doing something for someone, I'm trying to show them, you know, my love. And so I want it to be perfect. And she's like, so you're saying that you were showing me your love? And he was like, yes. And she just kind of was like, okay. Like, she could tell that he was kind of tense. Like, his energy was very off a little bit. So then they go and sit down, and she's just like, you know, you don't really hold my hand anymore. Like, the first week you would grab my hand and I really liked that, and now it's like I barely get hugs, you don't hold my hand. And he's like, well, you know, there's just a time and a place for that. And she says, I mean, time and a place, like, we're at home. Like, you would think this would be the time and the place to hold hands. And he's like, well, you know, I really only like to hold hands if I'm walking down the street or maybe in the car. And she's just like, you don't even hold my hand in the car, but okay. And she's basically just telling him, like, I don't really feel like we're in a marriage. I feel like we don't have any of the physical side of things that come along with marriage. And they're kind of going back and forth, and essentially, because she's talking about the physical, like, intimacy that she's wanting, James kind of feels like she's talking about more sexual things, even though Raya didn't say that. I think she literally just means like intimacy as far as like physical touch. Like, Raya's love language is probably physical touch. So somebody like me who's also has that love language, I'm like always touching my fiance, or whether I'm holding his hand or I have my arm on his arm or my leg on him, like, I'm just always trying to be connected to him. And it doesn't have to be something sexual. Like, I think people that don't know how to separate physical touch from sexual things, like, that's a red flag. Because, like, you can have intimacy without sex being involved. So James basically feels like that's what she wants. She wants to sleep with him. And she's like, no, I just want some type of intimacy from my husband, since this is supposed to be a trial marriage. And he's telling her, well, you know, I cheated on Ryan before and it was the worst year of my life. I'm never trying to cross that line again. And he's like, I just feel like you're so ready to leave Trey that you'll get with anybody. I mean, that's essentially like what he says, that she is like trying to throw herself at him because she doesn't want to be with Trey anymore. And I just felt like that was really harsh, and I would not have taken well to that. And obviously Raya did not either. So she just kind of gets up and walks away. So Ryan and Trey are on a date talking about how they would raise their kids, and they have a very similar idea of how their kids should be raised. And they talk about how they would split up the responsibilities in the marriage. And so like they're definitely talking about a lot of like serious future type of topics. I would say more so than probably the other couples are. So Trey tells her, you know, I really feel like I'm developing some feelings for you. And she doesn't really say it back. I think she's trying to be a little bit more careful with her words. But, you know, they do both say that this experience has helped them figure out what they want in the future. All right, so that was episode 4. Not a whole lot happened there, but let's jump into episode 5. So now they're on week 3 of the trial marriages, which is, of course, the final week before they switch back to their original partners. Roxanne introduces Alex to her parents now, and I'm like, okay, why are only Alex and Roxanne meeting the parents? Like, that was kind of weird. But anyways, so Roxanne's parents are kind of grilling Alex. Like, they're asking all types of questions. Like, okay, would you pull out the chair for her? Would you marry yourself? Like, you know, what kind of husband are you going to be? And her dad is like, you know, when we come over, you need to be engaged. You don't need to be on your phone or watching football. Like, that's disrespectful. Like, he's really a little bit intense. And I can see why Roxanne is the way that she is, because her parents are intense. And so is she. But I would say that Alex handled the hot seat pretty well. So now Ryan is introducing Trey to her brother and his girlfriend. And the girlfriend was kind of like dominating the conversation, which was a little weird because like, you're the girlfriend. She's like, so y'all have been together for 7 years. Like, that's life-changing to just end it after 7 years. And were you not worried that one of y'all was gonna fall in love with somebody else? And Ryan is like, well, you know, that was one of my biggest fears, but now I just feel like whatever happens is for the best. And her brother and his girlfriend are just like, you know, we're just so happy to hear that. So the girlfriend feels like James just hasn't really made Ryan his number one. And she's like, it's honestly insulting that he hasn't married you yet. So I'm like, okay, girlfriend, I see which side you're on. Okay. So Ryan's brother is like asking Trey if he likes it better being with Ryan than he did with his ex Raya. And he doesn't really answer. Trey is just kind of like, well, you know, I'm fully invested in this experience. He says, you know, me and Raya were very different, but me and Ryan are exactly the same, especially since they both issued their partners the ultimatum. They feel like they kind of are on the same page about marriage. Her brother says, you know, Ryan sounds like a whole different person. Like, she's way more outgoing. She was never this outgoing with James. And the girlfriend is like, well, if you end up with Ryan, you are the luckiest guy in the world because she's just so sweet and generous. And I was like, oh, that was really sweet. Because it's like, you know, if your brother ends up marrying this girl, that's going to be your sister-in-law. And I think it's just really nice when you have that type of bond. So I liked that moment. So now it's time for the guys' night. And y'all, during this, I took note of the ages because, you know, they show each guy's name and their age. And James is only 23. Like, I don't know why I thought he was like 26, 27. Like, he gives a very like serious, mature energy. I would say he acts more mature than some of the other guys on the show. And yet they are like 28, 29, 30, 31, like way older than him. But anyway, so Trey is like, you know, he feels like he's opening up a lot. He and Ryan are basically the same person. Like, he says this over and over. It's okay. So he tells them how her brother was like, yeah, Ryan's a completely different person now. And James' face is just like, and he says, well, that's interesting, because they always said to me that she opens up more to me than anybody. So I think he kind of was like, they're just saying anything, because they said the same thing to me as they're saying to you. But he does acknowledge that there's a wall between him and Ryan. So then he talks about his experience with Raya. He's like, okay, well, you know, the first 3 days were really good. We were getting along. And then since then, it's just been bad. He tells Trey that she didn't like that he wasn't really holding her hand or giving her hugs. She wanted the full marriage experience, and to him that included like sleeping together and being really physical. And then he's like, yeah, and Raya said she was open to that. And I was like, I don't remember her ever saying that. Like, James, I think you are putting 20 on 10 there. I think she was open to the experience and being in a trial marriage with you, but she never said that she was going to give you anything sexual. Like, let's be for real. So then Trey is like, well, you know, Raya FaceTimed me. And she was really upset and was like, I think James think I want to have sex with him. And so it was an awkward moment, because they kind of like called James out. Like, you're over here insinuating something. And she literally called me saying, I'm not trying to do that. Like, why is he even assuming that? So, yeah. So then they switch over to the girls, and they're talking about how living with the men has been. Kat says Antonio was very thoughtful, and, you know, she says he's always saying how he's doing this experience for Roxanne. And Roxanne is just like, I mean, yeah, he's thoughtful, but he doesn't plan ahead, and he just doesn't do enough. And then she kind of catches herself, because she was about to start talking bad about him yet again. And she's like, okay, well, let me not talk about him. She says that she's loved living with Alex because they basically talk about business all the time. And I'm just like, that doesn't sound fun at all, but okay. She kind of goes on and on about how, you know, she was open to sleeping with him and holding hands with him. And they're like, well, is Alex open to all that? And she's like, oh, yeah, he's totally open. Absolutely. He's completely open. And I just felt bad for Kat, kind of, because it was very, like, Kat, she took it like a trooper, because Roxanne was going on and on about that girl's man. Like, please. And I just kind of feel like she was putting 20 on 10 also, because I don't really think Alex and Roxanne had that much of a connection the way that she was trying to make it sound. And we will see in a second that they don't. So it switches back to Alex, and, you know, he's saying how Roxanne's willpower is exciting, but it's also very tiring, because she's so strong-willed and she's very overbearing. He then says that, you know, he holds her accountable, and, you know, that's what she needs. And Antonio is like, okay, well, I need you to be a little more specific. What do you mean by that? So Alex says, you know, well, one day she was like going off in her emails, pouring out all her emotions in her work emails. And I just told her, like, stop. Like, you don't need to do that. And Antonio was like, wait, you were reading her work emails? So Antonio is just like, that's weird. So then Antonio is like, you know, Alex, I feel like you're holding back. Like, I want y'all to criticize me. Like, don't be afraid to criticize me. I can take it. And so then Trey kind of chimes in, and he's like, well, you know, I only went on one date with Roxanne, but she did say that, you know, she wants to marry someone who's more self-driven. And Antonio acknowledges that he wasn't a very self-driven person. And he actually says that he feels like he's one of the most selfish people on earth. And I was just kind of like, that was a weird thing to say about yourself, but okay. But at least Antonio is honest. I will give him that. And then Antonio goes, I mean, Alex, I haven't really heard you say anything negative about yourself. Like, you don't criticize yourself much. And Alex was just like, me and Roxanne have just been working. And Antonio was like, yeah, she works a lot. And Alex was like, well, I actually work more than her, so. Oh my gosh, Alex is just one of those people where it's like, whatever you say, he's gonna say something contrary to what you said. Antonio says, that he's been an open book with Kat. He's told her all his embarrassing mistakes, but he doesn't really feel like Kat is reciprocating that. And this was interesting because Kat and Alex, who are the original couples, both of them seem to have issues with opening up about their vulnerable moments. And it's like you can kind of see how that relationship dynamic works for them. I don't think they really dig too deep. Whereas Antonio and Roxanne, that's probably something that they do all the time. So now that those couples have switched, it's an issue because they're just not used to that with their old partners. So then the conversation with the guys switches to them talking about physical connection versus emotional connection, and they're kind of giving their differing opinions. Antonio tells them, I haven't even been sleeping in the bed with Kat. And Alex is just like, that's weird. You guys should be sleeping in the bed together. And Antonio just feels like, intimacy doesn't really play that big of a role in a relationship. And the rest of them are like, nah, bro, I don't agree with that. So Antonio asks Alex if he has made a decision about marrying Kat. And Alex is just like, I've made progress towards the decision. Alex does not give straight answers. Like, Alex is going to give you a very politically correct answer that really answers nothing. That's what Alex is going to give you. So switching back to the girlies, Ryan asks if Raya could see herself with James, and she's like, no. He doesn't like to talk to her. They've had a back and forth about holding hands and hugs. Ryan tells her that she didn't give James any boundaries coming on the show. So basically she's like, I don't know why he's not hooking you, girl. I didn't tell him that he couldn't do that. He's doing that on his own. I told him that he's a grown man and he can make his own decisions. I'm like, I know that's right. So Raya doesn't feel like James is very open to the experience. Ryan says that she and Trey are fully invested. And Raya's like, okay, hold up. How invested are y'all? She says, so can you actually see yourself running off with Trey? And Ryan dodges the question a little bit. She's like, he's really nice and he would make a great husband. But at the same time, I know that he really loves you. So I'm a little bit scared about that. And it's like, Ryan, you are not about to go and run off with Trey. Like, be for real. So James has pulled Trey aside and says, Raya, she just isn't very compromising. Every argument we have, she has to win the argument. And he essentially tells Trey, I think you should pursue other women. I'm just like, not you coming to him as a man, telling him to leave his woman. That was weird. But anyways, Trey is like, well, let me ask you a question. Why is Ryan here? Y'all have been together for 7 years. What are you doing? He kind of called him out a little bit. He's like, well, you trying to talk about me and my ex. Let's talk about you. Okay. James says, well, I wanted to have a better job. And, she wasn't even my first love. Blah, 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 blah. He says, he wants her to know all of him before they move forward. And he hasn't told her everything about his past yet. So that's why he hasn't proposed. And it's like, what kind of excuse is that? Because you could just tell her everything about your past then so that you can propose. If that's something that's actually holding you back. But we know that's not really what's holding him back. Trey says, well, there's a reason why you didn't feel like you could fully open up to Ryan. Because you were able to open up to Raya in a week. And James is like, I didn't tell Raya everything either. Yeah, okay. So Trey asks James if he thinks that him not opening up is the biggest setback in his relationship with Ryan. And James is like, yeah, pretty much. And Trey is like, well, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you. According to her, that is not y'all's biggest problem. I feel like this was like such a awkward, intense moment because I just don't know how I would handle an outside person coming in and telling me what are the biggest issues in my relationship are. Like, you barely even know us, but go off. So Trey's like, Ryan's biggest issue is that you put things above her. And then he tells James that he asked Ryan if she would say yes if James proposed right now, and she said no. And I'm just like, geez, like, these conversations, y'all are real bold. Trey is like, I promise I'm not trying to make you mad. I know Ryan loves you, but, I do want to be happy, essentially, and I want her to be happy. So that was their conversation. So now Kat and Roxanne are talking, and Roxanne asks if she's nervous about her and Alex being together. And Kat's like, yeah, because you do possess a lot of the personality traits that I know that he wants. And it's kind of similar to how Antonio was feeling. So then Kat asks Roxanne, like, where's your head now? And Roxanne's basically like, well, Alex would be perfect, but he just doesn't really appreciate me enough. He doesn't really appreciate the beauty of a woman. Kat says Antonio was really hard on himself, and Roxanne is like, well, he should be. She's like, he's done some bad things, so it's like, okay. So then Roxanne starts telling her that, Alex just has some red flags, Kat. Like, he just lies about little things. And Kat's just like, okay, like, little things like what? And Roxanne is like, well, we went and we met my parents, and they asked him if he pulls the chair out and opens the car door for me, and he told them yes. And it's like, you have never done that. Like, why would you even lie about that? And it's like, that's the lies that you're talking about. Like, he was trying to impress your parents. Like, that's not really that big of a deal. Like, calm down. Roxanne feels like Alex is constantly trying to make himself seem better than what he is. She asks Kat if, she notices this. And Kat's like, yeah, he doesn't really like to criticize himself too much. And they essentially end the conversation with Roxanne saying that Kat deserves way better. So Alex and Antonio are talking now, and Antonio just straight up asks Alex, like, what are your intentions in this process? And Alex couldn't really answer it. And Antonio's like, you don't have to spare my feelings. Like, just tell me the truth. So Alex is like, well, you asked for it. Roxanne is mean. She doesn't respect you, and you are her whipping boy. He's like, what? Where are you getting that from? And Alex is like, she says things like, you wouldn't be anywhere without her. And Antonio doesn't believe it. He's like, I don't think that's what she said exactly. And it's like, okay, did she say these things exactly? No, he's paraphrasing. But that is kind of how it looks from the outside. Like, the way that Roxanne talks about Antonio is like, it doesn't seem like she really respects him, to be honest. Like, I couldn't imagine talking about my fiance that way to these random strangers and on national television. Like, if that's somebody that I was really trying to marry, I wouldn't be saying all those things. Like, she obviously doesn't really feel like he's enough for her, and she'll tell it to anyone that'll hear. But Antonio feels like Alex is just like every other man who just wants to take Roxanne from him. And he's like, oh, he just doesn't want to be with Kat. But it's like, no. I don't even think that Alex wants Roxanne, to be honest. I think he really was trying to just be honest with you and kind of give you a heads up. But the truth sucks to hear. So a lot of times people are in denial when they first hear things like that, especially about somebody that they really love and care about. All right, so that was the end of episode 5. Episode 6 starts off with Kat and Antonio both coming home from their night out with the girls or the guys. And Antonio is like, I'm just so angry because I just feel like Alex lied to me all night. And he tells Kat, I think that Alex just wants to be with Roxanne. And then Kat's like, well, I did know some information before tonight that I didn't tell you. But Alex's mom texted me and she just told me like Roxanne clearly doesn't like you. And Roxanne was like, she's just too busy to break up with you. Oh my gosh. And basically, Alex just says they're all liars. And he's just in denial. It's a lot easier to feel like people are lying than to feel like everything that you thought about somebody was wrong. It's like cognitive dissonance. That's essentially what's going on here. But we all know that Roxanne has been bashing him the entire show. So there's that. So anyway, he decides to call Roxanne. He's like, baby, why doesn't Alex think you respect me? And she just like pauses for a long time because she's trying to figure out what she's gonna say. And she's like, I mean, I told him things that I'm lacking from you, but he's just a liar. I never said any of those things. And so Antonio is all mad. He's calling Alex all types of names. And Kat is like, okay, well, we're not going to do that. You're not going to call him names in front of me. I'm like, period, girl. Stand up for your man. And Roxanne is like, come talk to me in person. And literally, Antonio walks out the apartment. And we just see him running down the street. Oh, my goodness. So then Roxanne comes home and she's clearly tense, but Alex, he's all happy-go-lucky. He's like, oh, give me a hug. How was your night? And she's like, how was your night? And he says, my night was good. We had fun. The guys were talking about how we've learned so much about ourselves. And I told them, like, I've just learned so much from you. And Roxanne is like, oh, so you've been saying good things about me, And he says, yeah. And she's like, well, that's interesting because Antonio called me and said that you were saying that I don't respect him and that he's my whipping boy. And you can tell that she was hoping that he was gonna like try to, backpedal. And he doesn't. Alex, he just stands 10 toes down. He doubles down on what he was saying. And she's like, well, do you think that Kat thinks that you're the best guy in the world? And Alex says, well, yeah. Alex is a trip. Like, oh my gosh. And to be honest, he's probably right. I really do think that Kat does think that he's the best guy in the world, which is kind of sad, but it is the truth. Roxanne is like, well, I told you those things in confidence, and then you ran and told Antonio, and so I just feel like now you're unloyal, and I don't want to be in a trial marriage with somebody that's being unloyal. And Alex is just like, I mean, the fact that you're mad that I went back and told him kind of proves that you were disrespecting him. And she's like, no, that's not what it means. Like, they were just going back and forth, y'all. And she talks about how, she's always cleaning and he doesn't help. And he's like, well, I took out the trash, but I'm not gonna do whatever you tell me to do. Like, you're not my mom. You're not gonna boss me around. I'm a grown man. He basically tells her she should just stay in her own lane and act like a mature, respectable woman. And that got her 38 hot. Roxanne was like, oh, And I mean, that last little part about her not acting like a mature, respectable woman, he was doing a little bit too much. He was trying to get under her skin. But yeah, that conversation was a lot. So Trey and Ryan talk, and they're just like, wow, like everyone was just struggling with their relationships and we haven't been having any issues. It's been great over here. And Ryan is just like, this is stressing me out because we're just doing so well. But y'all also haven't really talked about anything too deep to even have an argument about. So yeah, Raya and James are home, and Raya tells James, I talked to Ryan, and Ryan just says that she's really in this experience just like Trey, and James is like, well, what does that mean? What do you mean they're really into the experience? Like, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And Raya's just like, I don't know, but I'm going to bed. I'm like, period, Raya. She hopped up out of that conversation. Like, I don't know what they're doing, but they're in it, okay? So Antonio has finally made it to Roxanne's place because, you know, he literally ran there. They hug and he's like, Alex is just making stuff up. Like, let's just leave. You want to leave? Let's leave. And she's like, okay, let's calm down. Let's take a step back. We're not going home. I feel like I'm learning a lot. We're both learning a lot during this experience. And he's just like, you're right. Yeah, we should stay. Now it's the final day of the trial marriage. Raya is talking to James about how he seemed way more open to the experience at first. And he kind of tricked her. I think she feels like he made it seem like he was going to be more open with her than he actually was. And he apologizes for not being open and not giving her the experience that she deserved. And so they end on a relatively good note. Trey and Ryan are talking about how they really enjoyed their experience. Trey says, you know, I'm just not sure what I'm gonna do. She says that she's nervous to switch back to James because she feels like there might be some arguments now. Trey then asks if, you know, they'll be able to hang out or talk to each other after this. And she's like, no, I don't mind us talking. I don't really know if we're gonna be able to hang out. Like, that's a little much. We're gonna just play it by ear, seeing how things go. And it's like, Trey, you are doing a lot. Like, you just met this girl. Like, can you please relax? And then she gives him a photo album for their pictures. So it was cute. Roxanne and Alex are packing. Roxanne tries to like sit Alex down and apologize to him for raising her voice. And she's kind of like, you know, trying to be really nice about it. Like, I shouldn't have raised my voice. I'm not proud of that. I should have had a better delivery with you. Like, she's trying to give him time to jump in and say something. He does not. All he says is, you know, everyone has a weak moment. Everyone has a weak moment. And I understand. And he's like, yeah, but yeah, let's get back to backing. And she's like, hold up. You're not gonna say anything? You don't feel bad about anything that happened? And he's like, no, not really. I was thinking pretty clearly last night. Yeah, I feel pretty good about it. And I'm just like, there's no way I could date anybody like Alex because he never thinks he does anything wrong. So that means there's never going to be any accountability. There's never going to be any apologies because he always feels like he was in the right no matter what the situation was, and you just going to have to go along with it. Couldn't be me, and obviously could not be Roxanne either. So then we find out that Antonio didn't sleep at the apartment with Kat last night. And his clothes are all gone. Kat is not even sure where he is. She doesn't know if he's gonna come back. It was just kind of sad. But then he just randomly pops up, acting like everything's all cool. And he's like, you know, I know you're wondering what's up with me, but I just feel like I've gotten everything I need to get out of this trial marriage. Kat says, well, you know, I wanted to at least be friends or cordial, and I don't really feel like you allowed that to happen. You kept your walls and barriers up with me. And he says, you know, I just feel like you just don't really know yourself. You didn't take any stances on anything. You always gave me shallow answers. You can tell that he's a little bit angry still. And I think he's mad at Alex. And because Kat is Alex's partner, he's also kind of mad at her. And she clocks it. And she's like, I mean, well, some of that stuff you're saying is just my personality, but I do know who I am. Like, don't try to tell me I don't know who I am. And I just feel like you are actually angry with Alex, but you are projecting that onto me, which I agree with. And I mean, I just kind of... This whole thing is just weird because it's like you are getting told about yourself from people that have only known you for 3 weeks. And so I could see why Kat was just kind of like, don't do me and my man, because y'all do not even know us for real, for real. And so Alex ends it by saying, you know, well, at the changeover, everyone will get to tell their side because someone isn't being truthful. And it's like, okay, you just don't want to hear the truth. They're being very, very truthful. But okay, I digress. So then they have the changeover dinner. And y'all, I do not remember this on previous seasons. Like, I watched the Queer Love season, but I don't remember a changeover dinner. And I don't remember it on season 1 either. But I could just be, you know, forgetting. But I don't remember this. So essentially, all the couples come in. They sit down at the dinner. And Ryan and Trey are talking about how great things were for them and how similar they are. Same stuff they've been saying over and over and over again. Trey is like, Raya, I want you to know that I really did like this experience and I have developed feelings. And I was just like, why would you do that right here? Like, I just felt like that was really out of place. And you said, like, I'm not trying to make you feel uncomfortable, but what else would that do? And of course, she felt uncomfortable, like she was sad. And then Ryan continues with saying, you know, how good of a husband he would be. James says, you know, this is really hard to hear, but I'm not mad, and I don't believe him at all for a second. James looked mad the entire time. He says, you know, I just want the best for her, even if that's Trey. And Vanessa is kind of like, are you sure? Like, Vanessa can tell that he's just saying whatever, because his face was not giving that he was okay. He says, you know, it's just been really hard hearing other guys complimenting her because, you know, he was like, I just realized, like, wow, like, she could pull any guy here. And then Vanessa, see, Vanessa was real. I appreciated Vanessa on this one part. She was like, so it took 7 years of dating and you never realized any of this, but at the choice dinner, that's when you realized that she was the one. Like, it took all that. It took other guys to say how beautiful her eyes are for you to realize that she has beautiful eyes. Like, that's red flag. Ryan says it's just frustrating because, you know, like, she always knew that she wanted to marry James, and yet James never felt the same way, and now all of a sudden you feel like that. Girl, you need to run. That's how I feel. So Raya finally speaks up, and she's just like, I mean, I'm a little shocked, but at the same time I'm not, because I felt like Trey had feelings for Ryan, and it just hurts. And he basically says, you know, he just wants them to be happy and see where things go. And she's like, oh, we're not going to see where things go if you have feelings for somebody else. That part. She then talks about how James wasn't really fully invested in the experience, and she just was missing that physical touch, like hugs and holding hands. And Trey says, you know, I wish that James had opened up more so that Raya could have had her full experience. And that's when James apologizes again, and Raya acknowledges that James has a good heart, but he just needs to let go of his past trauma. And that's when Vanessa kind of starts talking about how she dealt with trauma from her past and she had to work through them in therapy, and working through them in therapy is what really like saved her relationship and brought her and Nick closer. And that is why I'm such a big advocate for counseling, couples counseling, individual counseling. You have to work through those issues, because one thing about trauma is going to show up, and one of the main places that it shows up is in your relationship. Most people don't even realize that they have all these deep issues until they are forced to face them when they get into a relationship. And if you don't work through those things, your relationship is not going to work out majority of the time. So Antonio says, you know, I came on this show to learn how to be a man, which was weird. It's like, why did you come on this show to learn that? But okay. Kat says it was hard to be in a trial marriage with Antonio because he just wasn't committed. Antonio apologizes and says, you know, I did care about Kat, and she agrees that he did care. She says she appreciates that Antonio helped her be more decisive and be more vocal. Roxanne says, you know, well, I was very open in this experience, but Alex just never gave me what I needed at all because he wasn't vulnerable. And Alex says, you know, Roxanne never really gave the situation a chance. And she says, you know, I don't appreciate you as a friend or a husband or as a person. And I was like, that is so harsh. Antonio says to Alex that, you know, Alex is the type of guy that he's the most insecure about. He's successful, he's financially secure, and he tells Alex that it really hurt me that you said that she didn't respect me. That's why I got upset. And Alex was just like, I mean, I would do it again though. Alex is savage. Like, Alex, he's gonna speak his mind regardless of how it comes out. And so after that, Roxanne pops up and is like, you have no emotion. You just have no emotion. And then Kat is like, well, I mean, where would Alex get that from? Like, you can tell that Kat is trying to, like, she's trying to stand up for her man, but she's uncomfortable doing this. But I commend her because I would have spoken up for my man too, girl. So she's like, where would Alex have gotten that? Like, he wouldn't just be making it all up. And Roxanne is like, Kat, don't you do it. She really tried to shut her down. But I was proud of Kat because Kat, she didn't let her shut her down. She was like, no, because his mom also texted me and said the same thing. So why would all these people be just making stuff up? And Antonio's like, well, I mean, it makes sense because he acts just like the people that raised him. None of them know what they're talking about. And I was like, oh, you're trying to fight. Because why are you bringing up this boy's parents saying they don't know what they're talking about and they're the ones that raised him? Like, he was trying it. But Alex stayed calm. And so now the dinner is over. They've all switched back to their original partners and they're going off back to their apartments together. Raya and Trey get back to their apartment and she says that she's glad that he got to have his full experience, but she just doesn't know what it's gonna look like being with him and knowing that he has feelings for someone else. And he, you know, he's trying to kind of backtrack. He's like, I mean, I still want to be with you. I always knew I wanted to marry you. Like, that hasn't changed. I just wanted us to get on the same page. And he basically says, like, if she had gotten the opportunity to fully explore the experience like he did, he feels like she would have also caught feelings for James. And she's like, oh no, don't try to do that. I was not going to catch feelings for anybody. I wasn't planning on doing nothing like that. I was here to work on us and to figure out what me and you needed to do. And you were out here catching feelings for a whole other girl. And she's just like, I can barely even look at you or talk to you right now. But he's trying to reassure her that, you know, he's still in it. But she doesn't know how she feels about him right now. And honestly, I don't blame her because we've been together for 2 years. I think we're together for like 2 years. And it took you 3 weeks to develop feelings for somebody else. Like, that is a red flag. And you're the one that gave the ultimatum. Like, that was a mess. So that is the end of this recap. We have one more. I'm gonna do 7, 8, 9, and then the reunion in the next video. Let me know your thoughts. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And don't forget to join the clique by hitting that subscribe button. And I will see y'all in the final recap video. Bye.